What is up, YouTube? We have a little bit of a different style video today. Um, I thought it would be a good idea to, kind of update you guys on like how I train and everything. Um, yeah, so let's get into it. So I first started lifting when I was like 14 years old, and I've been training for 6 years now. I'll be 20 in July, so 5 years for now, but whatever. There's a lot of things that, I was doing wrong when I first started lifting. It was most kids when you're 14 years old or whatever are training for a sport or whatever. And my sport that I like to play was football. So, I was just doing like basic stuff like bench press and squat and stuff like that. And then I realized that, I'm not going, pro. So, when you're first starting out, I recommend to not, go super hard. I mean, it's good. You want to have like high intensity when you're lifting, but when you're first starting out, you want to focus on your form because form is everything. If you have bad form, you're at risk for injury. You're at risk for, you know, it just looks weird. If you have bad form, like you don't want to be the person with bad form. So you always want to make sure that you're watching videos and making sure that your form is good, because if you have good form, it might take a little bit longer for your weight to move up, but it will keep you less injury prone in the long run. So definitely a important thing to focus on would be having good form with all your lifts. That's one of the main things that I always focus on, is making sure that you want to be controlling the eccentric of the movement, which is the lowering of any weight. Like if you're like doing a bench press, right? You're out here, well, hands out here, and you're like pressing down like this. The coming down motion like this is the eccentric, and the coming out is the concentric. So that eccentric movement, this right here is where you're going to be gaining all that muscle, and that part right there is where you want to be as controlled as possible. A lot of people will, they'll start up here and they'll just let the weight fall like straight down to their chest. You don't want to do that. That puts you at risk for tearing, muscles. You always want to be in control of the weight. A big problem with that, a lot of people will, eagle lift. They'll up the weight like crazy, and they'll go to, hit a rep or whatever, and they'll just like drop it right on their chest, and they might push it up or whatever, but it's not, you're better off just, controlling the weight. Yeah. So right now, my style of training, there's different styles out there. There's high volume training and low volume training are the main two, I think. I used to do higher volume training, like 4 sets per exercise, but my body started to get pretty fatigued from that over a while. So now I'm doing low volume training. I've been doing that the past 2 weeks, just 2 working sets for each exercise. And that's been working pretty well for me. I haven't been too fatigued, but when you have lower volume like that, you need to have higher intensity. So you want to be failing around 6 to 8 reps for each set. So usually what I do is I'll find like a warm-up weight and like make sure, if I'm doing a shoulder press like with dumbbells, I will I will, grab, like my working set's probably 70 pounds. So I'll grab something like 40 pounds and I'll just take it here and do, just a couple slow reps just to feel it and to, get my mind ready, for that exercise. So that way, I'm not going, right into the set with full intensity, because it's just smarter to warm up. You don't want to hurt yourself if you're just jumping right into it. So yeah, what works best for me is the 2 sets. So far, that lower volume is what works best for me. Everybody's different. Other people train differently. So I wouldn't say, just do low volume training. I would try everything else. Try everything else out, especially when you're first starting lifting. Try everything out. Don't hop. like don't do 1 week of low volume and be like, oh, this isn't working, and hop to a different style of training, because that's not, you want to be consistent with your program. Consistency is the biggest thing in the gym. You don't want to quit, because if you quit after a month and you're not seeing progress, it takes longer than a month. Like when I started lifting, I was 130 pounds and now I'm like 180. So I've put 50 pounds on in 6 years, which is pretty good, I think. But a lot of people, I'll see kids my age, whatever, will lift, and they'll only lift for a couple months, and then they'll hop off and they'll be like, I stopped lifting because I wasn't seeing progress or anything like that. But it's a discipline. You have to keep your mind in it, and you have to be showing up every day with that same intensity. So yeah, pick whatever you want. You can start with low volume, and then if you're like used to that and you're like, okay, I want to go to 3 sets, go to 3 sets. Doesn't matter, honestly. Everybody's different. So currently, for splits and stuff, people talk about, oh, what's the magic split and everything. There's not a magic split. It's the nice thing about lifting is everything is very personalized and tailored to your need, or just personalized to whatever you prefer. When I first started lifting, I was doing 6 days on and 1 day off. So I would do 6 days in a row of working out and then 1 rest day. And I've tried to do that now, and I feel like my recovery hasn't been as well. So I'm doing 3 days on and 1 day off. And normally that looks like a push day, leg day, and then a back day, and then a rest day, and then chest, legs, back, rest day. So it's basically just push, pull, or push, legs, pull with that rest day in there. I would organize that split to whatever body part you think you are lagging the most, because at the beginning of your split, your CNS, your central nervous system, is going to have the most energy. You're going to be the most fresh in the beginning of the week. Yeah, so 3 days on and 1 day off is what I would recommend. But if you want to do 6 days on and 1 day off, go ahead. Like, it doesn't matter. That's the cool thing about, lifting. Another thing I want to bring up, the whole thing with getting into the gym is you need to have your goal. Are you joining the gym are you joining for a sport? If you're joining for a sport, training is going to look a lot different than this. It's going to be more strength focused, but also speed work too. This is strictly like bodybuilding, because that's what I like to do. I like bodybuilding as a style of training. Because my goal is basically just to be, I just want to be big, I want to be big and be able to lift, a lot of weight. That was the thing for me, because football, I want to get strong and fast, but now I'm not playing football. I'm out of high school now, so I'm not really playing a sport. So I just, kind of want to just be as big as I can. Yeah, so the biggest thing with lifting, one of the biggest things, is a term called progressive overload, which is, progressing in one type of, I don't know what to call it. You have your sets, you have reps, and you have weight. You want to be progressing in one of those compared to the previous workout. So for example, if you squatted 135 for 6 reps the week before, and you go to hit legs again, and you decide, I'm going to do 135 again, but you get 8 reps or whatever, you get more reps than last time. That's progressive overload, and that means that you're gaining strength, you're gaining size, whatever. You want to make sure that you're always, pushing, that you're pushing yourself, because a lot of people can be stagnant in the gym, but it's very important to always be pushing and always be, trying to be better, and don't ever be, comfortable with where you're at. Don't stay comfortable, because as soon as you go to stop, if you take, days off or whatever, because you're like, I don't feel like going in, whatever, you just got to do it. You got to be disciplined and go do it. So, yes, progressive overload. Stay consistent with your program. Don't change it up every week. I would say do low volume, like before you'd want to switch would be maybe like a month. I would wait like a month. As long as your form is good, which you can watch videos and stuff on that, or watch my videos or whatever. As long as your form is good and you think you can move up in weight, move up in weight. But as soon as you go to move up in weight and your form lacks, you gotta kill the ego, and you gotta bring the weight down, because you're doing more harm than good there. A big thing that's important too is, diet, eating, and everything. This part here kind of depends, like how bad you want it. Like how bad do you want to, how much better do you want to be as a football player, whatever, in your sport? How much better do you want to be at bodybuilding, for example? Like for me, those things, like the food that you put into your body is very important. I like to think of it as like, you're basically an engine. Like your body's an engine, and you put gas in the engine to fuel it, right? So that's basically food. You want to be putting good, clean food into your engine, as gas, so that your engine runs well. If you're eating, donuts or whatever, or cake or whatever, ice cream, and you're lifting and you're expecting results, you're not gonna get as good results compared to as if you were eating steak and, clean carbs and stuff like that. So yeah, that is the thing, because if you don't really care about your diet, and you're just like, whatever, I'm just gonna eat whatever I want, then you must not want it. Like it's all personal preference, and I'm not knocking anybody for that, but if you don't want it as bad as other people, then you don't want it. And I think it's okay, to have a cheat meal like every once in a while. You can live your life, whatever, but I'm just saying, for the sake of trying to, like, if you're trying to gain muscle the most efficient way possible, you're going to be eating the cleanest you can. So yeah, this is the other one too, with depending on what your goal is. If you're trying to lose weight, you want to cut your calories, but keep your protein level at, that body weight that you're at. But yeah, that's the main thing though, I know, is you just calorie deficit. That's how you lose weight. But for bulking, if you're trying to gain weight, if your current body weight is like 160, like for example, for me, like gaining weight, that's my current goal, is gaining weight. I want to bulk up and just, be huge and lift crazy weight. But I was 160, I think, senior year when I graduated, which was last year. And I wanted to be 180, like how I am right now. So I upped my protein goal to 180. And I think everybody's different for calories. Like for bulking, you have your maintenance calories, which is like what your body maintains, like your body mass at. My maintenance calories, I think, is 3,000 or 3,200. If you're bulking, you're going to go roughly like 300 calories above that. So it's going to be like 3,500 calories to 3,600. That's how it is for me. An obvious one, drinking water. I aim to drink 3 liters of water every day. Especially if you're taking creatine. Creatine is probably the best natural supplement that you can take for muscle growth. There's a whole bunch of studies and stuff if you want to look into that. There's tons of videos on it. It's completely natty. I've been taking it since 8th grade, so creatine definitely helps. So, and another thing, people talk about like pre-workouts and stuff like this. I take pre-workout, and I drink energy drinks and stuff like that. but those like supplements aren't, they help you, you know, like they help you in your workouts, they give you energy or whatever, but they aren't the thing, you know, like that. Taking pre-workout or taking creatine or whatever, it doesn't do anything unless you put in the work and you have the discipline and drive, you know, to push harder and push through, you know, plateaus or anything you might have. But same thing with steroids. People think, you know, if I take steroids, you know, that I'm going to get huge and everything, which is not the case. You have to be eating and your sleep has to be dialed in. Another thing, I never really struggled with this, but a lot of kids might, like the younger age groups. Don't compare yourself to other people. I know, you know, like body dysmorphia. I know with social media nowadays, like with TikTok and everything, you see people like, there's kids my age that are way bigger than me and way shredded than, like, they're just way stronger than me. Like kids at my age are benching like 500 pounds and all this stuff. You know, it's just stuff like that. That's just genetics is what it is. It just comes down to genetics, you know, and the way God made you, and that's just how it is. So try not to compare yourself to others because that kind of ruins the whole journey for yourself. You know, just focus on comparing yourself to the previous person you were the day before, you know, trying to beat yourself, you know, beat the version of yourself before, and focus on improving every day. Yeah, and the same thing with, you know, styles of training. You know, you might have buddies that are like, why do you train like that? Or why do you do that program? It's different for everybody. Sometimes I'll get into arguments with my buddy and I'll be like, why are you lifting like that? But the gym culture has changed into this like scientific lifting, trying to find the most optimal way of lifting. It's not like that at all. Just lift how you want to lift. If there's anything you're going to pull out of this video, this right here, sleep, I know is like boring. Like you want to stay up with your buddies playing, you know, Rocket League, Fortnite, whatever on Xbox. I wish, this is definitely one of the main things. I never really took my sleep serious until probably last year. You always want to aim, especially if you're younger or my age, you know, 19, whatever, 19, 20. You want to be aiming for 8 hours of sleep, which is, you know, it's kind of tough to get. I get up at 4:45 every morning, so I'm usually, yeah, it's 8:20 right now. I'm usually in bed at 8:45. I try to be, you know, sleeping at 8:45 because that's 8 hours of sleep, but, you know, 7.5 hours to 8 hours, you know, that's kind of where you want to aim. It's okay to have some nights, you know, where you have 6 hours of sleep and, you know, you're kind of just gonna, you know, whatever, you know, you push through the day. But another thing that I struggle with sometimes is rest days. A lot of times, especially with this 3-day split, I'm like, you know what, I really want to go to the gym tomorrow on the rest day and hit something like shoulders or whatever, which is what I did today. Today was supposed to be a rest day, but I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go hit shoulders. But yeah, take your rest days unless you're like me and it's like, you know, whatever, I don't really care. Because rest days are really important for your nervous system to, you know, take a day off and to reset for tomorrow's lift. Yeah, so take your rest days. Rest days are very important. If you're really dedicated, track how many sets, track how many reps, and track the weight for that workout. I was doing that a little bit like 2 years ago. I haven't done that in a while though, just because I kind of have a feel for, like, you know, the ranges and stuff that I fail at now. I probably should start logging again, but, you know, we'll see. Yeah, but tracking your lifts goes hand in hand with that progressive overloading. It's hard to know if you're progressing if you're not tracking anything, right? So if you're really dedicated, you know, and you really want to see results, I would track your stuff. One of the main things I would say is, you know, like I said earlier, you know, be consistent. You know, don't get discouraged. You're going to hit plateaus. I've hit many plateaus. I'm actually kind of in one right now, but you're going to hit many plateaus in your lifting career and you just got to push through them. Just show up, keep pushing as hard as you can, you know, just stay disciplined. But that first year of lifting, if you've never lifted before in your life, is going to be some of the best gains you're going to have. They call them newbie gains. And that period of when you start lifting is one of the most crucial times to do all this stuff that I talked about. All that, finding your form, finding that program that works for you, like low volume or high volume training. As soon as you find that, stick to that, and if it works for you, great. And the sooner you can figure out what works for you, the sooner you can, it's almost like if you like in your first year of lifting, if you were to go into it and be like, yeah, like I'm just going to come in and, 3 sets of 10 and just stop at 10 and not really fail at 10, I'm just kind of going through the motions. If you're going through the motions in your first year of lifting, you're missing out on so many gains that you could have, earlier, instead of waiting, 2 years or whatever. Well, it's not like that fast, but you're going to get gains faster if you lift smart, with good form and not having an ego. If you do those things as quick as you can and just be disciplined as quick as you can, you are going to progress way faster if you were to just, slack off and just do whatever when you go to the gym. But yeah, that's basically, this is going to be a very long video, but those are basically the main things, that I think are important when it comes to lifting. People to watch, very important. I think it was 2022. It was my sophomore year of high school, I remember. And, I kind of was like, that was the transition. Freshman to sophomore year was where I was kind of like, I'm not really big into this, football training and stuff. Let me see like what other kind of, training or whatever. Like, how do you actually train, like for bodybuilding or whatever? So, I was looking up, people, to watch and stuff, and who's the best lifter, basically, of the year. And it was Chris Bumstead because, classic physique is, what I'm basically aiming, my physique to be like. So yeah, I watched C-Bum, Chris Bumstead, and bro, like his videos, I mesh with his personality so well. I love his videos. They're not, they're serious enough, but they're also very good to learn videos. He doesn't talk too much about form and stuff like that, but his form is literally perfect with everything he does because he's a 6-time Mr. Olympia. So if there's anybody that you want to watch for form, Chris Bumstead and Hani Rambod. Hani Rambod is Chris Bumstead's coach, and Hani Rambod does more teaching on his channel of like, exercises and form and stuff like that. But if you just want to watch somebody for form, Chris Bumstead is the go-to. That's who I recommend. Chris Bumstead is the guy who made me fall in love with lifting, basically. I think I've watched every single one of his videos for now until, the past 4 years, probably. But yeah, he's retired now. He's not competing anymore. So the videos that he's posted in the last, 2 years are probably not going to be the best for hypertrophy or, bodybuilding. But anything before that, between 3 years ago and 5 years ago, are going to be like the best videos to watch. So if you are, struggling to put together like exercises to put in for like a, say you want to hit chest, but you don't know the order of your workout or you don't know what exercises to do, you literally can go on Chris Bumstead's channel or my channel and you can watch the exercise and just literally follow in that order. So I would watch the whole video before I go to lift, and then I would just remember, okay, pre-exhaust with the cable fly, and then go into incline dumbbell press, and then go into, a flat press with the machine. Like, what I'm saying is, if you're a little intimidated, it can be a little intimidating to go into the gym and not know what you're doing for like your order of your workout. Just go on my channel, or you can go on C-Bum's channel and you can watch our videos and be like, okay, this is what they started with, and just follow in line, and that's basically it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I got. This is going to be a pretty long video and probably pretty boring, but if you guys made it to the end, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, drop a comment, go follow the TikTok and the Instagram. Helps out the growth on the channel. Yeah, let me know if you guys like, videos like this. Definitely looking to add more, personal, content like this instead of just workouts or whatever. But, yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.